Good morning, welcome. On behalf of the National High Court of Brazil, STJ, I would like to welcome all of you. We have 2/3 of the population of the world here today represented, and a huge part of the wealth, both intellectual and economic, of the world. It's not a small gathering of people, but people that represent countries that are very close to us, to Brazil, and more to the National High Court of Brazil. This is the second dialogue between Brazil, the Asia Pacific, within the STJ. And the idea is to have one every year as an update of what's happening in that region, or the two regions, and in Brazil, and how law fits into this mosaic of very important countries. Here today, we have, and I will thank later the ambassadors and the diplomats that represent those countries: Myanmar, Nepal, Vietnam, Pakistan, South Korea, Cambodia, Thailand, India, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, New Zealand, Japan, China, Singapore, East Timor. I hope I have not forgotten any of the countries that have confirmed. The special guest today, as we have done with the other regions of the world, and including the Asia Pacific, is Ambassador Susan Kleebank, someone that I admire personally very much. And I invite her to join us. We also have, and this is part of the tradition that has been built, invited 2 ambassadors of Brazil in the region to participate by Zoom. And as you know, the time zone is not exactly perfect for this type of engagement. We are privileged to have today the Ambassador of Brazil in Japan, Ambassador Octávio Henrique Garcia Côrtes, a good friend, and Ambassador Henrique Ferraro, the Ambassador of Brazil to ASEAN. We also invited one of the 2 ambassadors that spoke last year, Ambassador Jorge Monteiro Prata, our ambassador in Indonesia, another very good friend. The other guests are Ambassador Bolat Nussupov, the ambassador of Kazakhstan. As you know, he's the dean of the Asian group in Brasília. And we also invited Ambassador Andhika, and I always hesitate to fully pronounce his last name, Chrisnayudhanto. I'm sure I'll be, if I were in a court, I would be sentenced to death after this terrible pronunciation or mispronunciation. The ambassador of Indonesia, and he's the coordinator of the ASEAN Committee in Brasília. So please come to the front, the three of you, and by video link, and I ask our tech people to connect. In fact, they are already connected. The three ambassadors of Brazil in Japan, Indonesia, and ASEAN. It's also my privilege to recognize the presence among us of Ambassador Pedro Ortega Terra, Director of the Department of China, Russia, and Central Asia, Ambassador Paulo Elias, Director of the Department of Japan, the Korean Peninsula, and the Pacific, Minister Aurelio Viotti, the Chief of Cabinet of Sea Asia, Minister André Saboya Martins, Director of the Department of India, South and Southeast Asia, Councillor Juliana Sampaio Chiku Falcon Lins, the Chief of Division of Japan and the Korean Peninsula, Councillor Vanessa Bonifacio Tavares, Chief of Division of Australia and the Pacific, Secretary Adriana Fernandes Farias with Asia, Secretary Carlos Gustavo da Fonseca Velho, Chief of the Division of the Southeast Asia, Insular or Islands, Secretary Raul Torres Branco of the Division of Russia and Asia, Central Asia, Minister Marcos Rodrigues Savini, Division of Mechanisms of Political and Regional Mechanisms, and Luis Fernando Vasilevsky from the division, the same division, the Chief of the Division China and Mongolia, Márcio Guilherme Porto, and the Chief of Staff, Department of China, Russia, and Central Asia, Pedro de Souza Dantas. Many thanks to all of you. You see that we have a large portion of the Itamaraty present here. The collaboration between this court and Itamaraty is very strong. I cannot count the number of times we do things together, and this is just one of the many activities that we, in different areas, including international law, worked together. Finally, let me thank Minister Arnaldo Fernandes, the head of the International Office of SDG. He is the person responsible for everything that that will be happening today. So if you have any complaint, go to him. If not, you can also go to him. With that, let me invite Ambassador Susan for her opening remarks, and then we'll follow the program. I'll be sitting here. The plan is we have the presentations, and I forgot to mention that we are webcasting. It's on YouTube. It's important that the country understands what we are doing. You know, Brasília is seen as a place too remote from the rest of the country, and especially we, the courts. It's not just in Brazil, in your countries too, courts are seen as quite remote, almost alien, an entity from Mars or another planet. And here we want to show that we are not just deciding cases, but also very much attuned to what's happening around the world, since we are influenced by what happens in other countries and through collaboration in the area of law and judicial cooperation. We also try to learn from the other countries and vice versa. So we are webcasting the whole event. So first we are going to have the presentations, then we are open for discussion, questions, comments, and at the end we will have a nice lunch. Ambassador, it's your turn.
Good morning, bom dia a todos. Since this event is being broadcasted, I was informed that I'm supposed to speak in Portuguese and you can get the translation in your headphones. Excelentíssimo senhor presidente do Superior Tribunal de Justiça, ministro Herman Benjamin, excelentíssimos senhores, caros participantes.
Good morning, Your Excellency, President of the Superior Court of Justice. Your Excellencies, first I would like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very important initiative of the Superior or High Court of Justice, our Court of Citizenship. I've been invited to speak about Brazil's relations with Asia and the Pacific, which is a challenge, given the diversity among the countries that make up this vast region, many of which are represented here today at the highest level. At the first edition of this event in 2024, my predecessor, Ambassador Eduardo Saboia, spoke about Brazil's relations with some of our key partners in Asia. Our ambassadors in Beijing, New Delhi, and Jakarta participated remotely, which led to the seminar prioritizing, at the time, China, India, and Indonesia. Since then, there have been major steps forward in our relations with these three countries. This is illustrated by the state visits that took place since then. President Xi Jinping visited Brazil in November of 2024, and President Lula visited China in 2025. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received in Brazil in 2025, and President Lula visited India in February of this year. President Prabowo Subianto visited Brazil in 2025, and President Lula visited Indonesia in the same year. On each of these occasions, there were various agreements signed, numerous business deals concluded, and especially the strengthening of friendship and cooperation. The initiatives of the President of the SDJ seem to have a prescient quality. To continue with this momentum, I would like to speak today more specifically about the opportunities in Brazil's relationship with two regions of growing importance to our country, the Southeast Asia and Central Asia. I will also address one of our longest-standing and more fruitful relationships with Japan. I won't go into too much detail, as we will be joined, as it's been mentioned, by three leading experts on these topics. Henrique Ferraro, Ambassador of Kazakhstan to Brazil, Bolat Nussupov, and Octávio Côrtes. And Jorge Prata from Jakarta will also make some comments, and the ambassador to Indonesia will also make a few comments. In relation to Southeast Asia and ASEAN, I will be talking about the 11 countries which make up ASEAN, which are Brunei, Cambodia, the Philippines, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and since last year, East Timor. Together, these 11 countries rank fourth among the world's largest economies, with a combined GDP of $4.5 trillion. Their combined population forms the third largest of the planet, with approximately 700 million people. Southeast Asia has shown consistent economic growth over the past 2 decades, with average rates exceeding 5% per year, establishing itself as one of the most dynamic hubs of the global economy. ASEAN's 11 countries together rank 5th among Brazil's largest trading partners. In just over 2 decades, our trade with Southeast Asia has grown tenfold, going from $3 billion in 2003 to $38.5 billion in 2025. In recent years, Brazil's trades with ASEAN countries has been expanding at an annual average of nearly 15%, in contrast to the relative stagnation of traditional markets in the country. Furthermore, this trade represents a surplus for Brazil, because the region accounts for 15 to 20% of Brazil's overall foreign trade surplus. In this context, Brazil is establishing itself as a reliable and predictable supplier of energy and food, contributing directly to the energy needs and food and nutritional security of a region that is densely populated and in rapid urbanization. Also, the political and diplomatic depth of the relationships we are building is worth mentioning. A milestone of this approachment was President Ignacio Lula da Silva's participation of the 47th Asian Summit last year in Kuala Lumpur at the invitation of Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. It was the first time that a Brazilian head of state participated in this high-level forum. Days earlier, President Lula also became the first Brazilian president to visit ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta, where he was received by Secretary-General Dr. Kao Kim Horn of Cambodia. During this third term, he made visits to Vietnam, Indonesia, as I mentioned, and Malaysia. Minister Mauro Vieira also traveled to the region 3 times since taking office at Itamaraty. He visited Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, and was the first Brazilian foreign minister to visit Cambodia in 2023, as well as the Philippines in 2024. Personally, I had the opportunity to visit Thailand last year, and in last March, Cambodia and Singapore, all 3 countries where I was able to confirm the region's economic strength, as well as its potential and interest in collaborating with Brazil across a wide range of sectors. The agenda we have been developing with each of these Southeastern Asian countries is positive and is expanding rapidly, starting with our diplomatic presence. In 2023, we opened a mission in Jakarta dedicated exclusively to ASEAN, and in 2025, an embassy in the Kingdom of Cambodia. As a result, we now have resident ambassadors in 9 of the 11 countries that make up ASEAN. Brazil was the first Latin American country to join the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, a treaty that marks its 50th anniversary this year. Brazil was also the first and remains the only Latin American country to establish a partnership for sectoral dialogue with ASEAN. Since 2023, within this partnership, we have developed a broad cooperation agenda with ASEAN under the document Areas of Practical Cooperation 2024-2028, with 33 lines of cooperation ranging from bioenergy, energy transition, food and nutritional security, to educational and cultural cooperation. This set of measures underpins Brazil's call to elevate this partnership with ASEAN to the level of a dialogue, partnership, reaffirming the Brazilian government's long-term commitment to a solid and constructive presence in the region.
When it comes to Central Asia, I would like now to address the growing importance of this region for Brazil, just as for the world. Central Asia, I mean Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Throughout history, Central Asia has been a crossroads of goods, ideas, religions, and cultures. Nowadays, this region serves as a strategic link on the Asian continent. Located between Russia and China, the Indian subcontinent, and the Middle East, the region is playing an increasingly prominent role not only in terms of logistics and connectivity, but also in terms of energy, minerals, and food security. Central Asian countries are experiencing significant growth rates and are seeking to diversify their external partners. For Brazil, this region offers great opportunities in three main areas: economic diplomacy, multilateral coordination, and business expansion. Trade relations between Brazil and the countries of Central Asia remain modest, but have been growing and diversifying. By 2025, Kazakhstan had established itself as our main trading partner in the region. The Brazilian exports were concentrated in high value-added products such as machinery, equipment, car parts, capital goods, besides agro-industrial products. Our imports include fertilizers, chemical inputs, and mineral products. In the case of Uzbekistan, the trade saw a sharp increase in 2023 and in 2024, due primarily to the rise in Brazilian imports, mainly when it comes to fertilizers and manure. Just as Kazakhstan, Brazilian exports, they are concentrated on industrialized products. The trade agenda is similar for the other countries in the region, which, in general, show interest in expanding cooperation in agriculture, energy, mining, water resources, and infrastructure with Brazil. There are significant opportunities for Brazilian companies in the fields of renewable energy, aviation, food, and livestock. It is with this perspective in mind that we have intensified our political and diplomatic dialogue with a renewed focus on Kazakhstan. We have had bilateral political consultations that took place in December of 2025 when I visited Astana. I also visited Uzbekistan, where I held a political consultation meeting, and to Turkmenistan, where I represented Brazil at the 30th anniversary of International Neutrality Day. In these three countries, I verified notable progress and a genuine interest in Brazil. I visited universities with high demand for Portuguese language courses, and right after that, they were established. We established Brazilian language and culture centers. I also held meetings with business entities seeking to do business and participated in cultural events featuring artists who honor our identity. Similarly, we have been receiving an increasing number of visits from Central Asia. Last year, Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Murat Narteliu came to Brazil with an agenda that included meetings with the National Confederation of Industry and major Brazilian companies such as Embraer, Vale, Marco Polo, and Tramontina. This month, we are going to welcome an important Kazakh delegation led by a deputy minister trying to find opportunities in the agricultural sector. We want to continue building closer ties and, of course, expanding these perspectives. Brazil has a single resident embassy in the region in Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan, which is also responsible for our relations with Turkmenistan and Kyrgyzstan. Relationships with Uzbekistan fall under under the purview of our embassy in Moscow, and those with Tajikistan under the embassy in Islamabad. Only Kazakhstan has a resident embassy in Brazil, which also covers 9 other countries on our continent. Despite logistical limitations, we have made progress. We share significant common ground in multilateral forums. Furthermore, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan have recently become partner members of the BRICS. Business missions, as well as Indonesia, that I have just mentioned. Business missions and regular political dialogue in turn indicate that Central Asia has become part of the strategic horizon of our foreign policy. And is going to be visited soon by our Minister Mauro Vieira. Our main challenge is to transform this enormous potential into stronger trade and investment flows, greater educational and cultural exchange, and increased technical cooperation. Now, I'm going to wrap up by mentioning a few things about Japan, which is our most traditional partner in Asia, and he plays a central role, and they represent a strong, significant clout in terms of technology, financial aspects, and political. In 2025, we celebrate 130 years of diplomatic relations, which have evolved from a relationship historically rooted in friendship to a partnership increasingly guided by strategic priorities. The 2025-2030 action plan adopted during President Lula's state visit to Japan in March of last year consolidates this new phase. Japan possesses first-rate technological, financial, and industrial capabilities. Brazil, in turn, offers economic scale, a diversified industrial base, a clean energy mix, and significant assets in food, security, biofuels, and critical minerals. This is a partnership between complementary economies in areas that are critical to the global economy. This frame lends strategic depth to the bilateral relationship we have with Japan, with significant opportunities for progress in key sectors through 2030. The relationship also has a clear political dimension. The decision to elevate the dialogue between the foreign ministers to the level of an annual strategic dialogue reflects the understanding that the challenges of the international scenario require close bilateral coordination, intense dynamism on the bilateral agenda as well. In 2025, President Lula visited Tokyo. The foreign ministers held talks in Johannesburg in February. Princess Kako of Akishino visited Brazil in June, and a political consultation meeting took place in Tokyo, which I was fortunate to be able to take part in. At the same time, we need to make progress on the economic front. Trade between the two countries grew in 2025, but remains below the peak reached in 2011, when we reached 17 billion US dollars, with a surplus of 1.6 billion US dollars for Brazil. In the future, we believe we're going to advance the negotiations between Mercosur and Japan regarding the launch of negotiations for an economic partnership agreement, which opens up very positive prospects for trade, investment, and productive integration. I must also mention the human foundation of our bilateral relationship, given the presence in Brazil of the largest Nikkei community outside Japan, approximately 2.7 million people, and the 5th largest Brazilian community abroad. We have over 200,000 people in that archipelago. These ties strengthen and offer growing prospects for the bilateral relationship. To conclude, I would like to say that these general comments that were discussed about Brazil's foreign policy strategy toward Asia, they are general, and I can say geographically limited, as you have seen, because they don't include important partners such as Korea, visited by President Lula, and also India, that received attention mentioned in the past, and China, that was also part of the previous edition. And of course, they can be discussed in other versions, and we can have the same format. Each country represented here has its own culture and history, as well as specific opportunities and challenges for its relationship with Brazil. It is undeniable, however, that Asia as a whole is the most dynamic region in the world. As mentioned earlier, I recently visited Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and Singapore, and they were amazing, amazing surprises. Every single place visited, as the Ambassador of Australia mentioned yesterday, they were wonderful surprises. They are flourishing and offering new cooperation opportunities and exchange opportunities for Brazil. Our main task is to work to transform all of this diversity into mechanisms of complementarity and opportunities for development for our countries. I would therefore like to reiterate my thanks to Chief Justice Herman Benjamin for initiating this meeting, which broadens our mutual understanding and enables the building of new bridges between Brazil and Asian countries. Thank you very, very much. I would like to thank Ambassador Susan that mentioned one of the points that are essential for the law, for us justices and judges, which is the predictability. Without predictability, the law does not work. International law doesn't work, and national laws don't work. That is an essential aspect. And maybe the ambassador, without saying that together with predictability, we have the culture of peace. And this region for us is extremely important when it comes to these two main points: predictability in our economic relationships, political relations, legal relations, and in second place, the culture of peace. For me, these two main points, they are a matter of existence for the nation's community and for us justices and judges. Let's move on now. Let's pass the floor to Ambassador Bolat Nussupov. And he is the Dean of the Asian Group. Right after that, we're going to listen to Mr. Andhika and our two ambassadors from Japan and Asia, and later on, Ambassador Giorgio Prata.
Your Honor, dear President of the Supreme Court, Mr. Herman Benjamin, Your Excellency, dear Ambassador Susan Kleebank, dear colleagues, dear participants, thank you very much for the invitation. It is a great honor for us as the only embassy from Central Asia in Brazil to be part of this important event. We are first time here so by this good team, yes. Ambassador Kleebank said, today our diplomatic presence is quite unique. Kazakhstan has an embassy in Brazil, and Brazil has one in Kazakhstan. Ladies and gentlemen, for centuries, Central Asia has been a connected geopolitical and cultural region. It is rich in natural resources, has strong human potential, and deep historical and cultural heritage. Because of this, the region played an important role in the history of the Great Silk Road and across Eurasia, while keeping its unique identity. Despite a complex history, the countries of the region have proven their strength and taken their place in the international community. Today, Central Asia is a region of stability, trust, and active development. Relations between our countries have improved a lot. We have built open dialogue, strengthened partnerships, and expanded trade, economic, and humanitarian cooperation. The growing importance of the region can also be seen in the Central Asia Plus format. In recent years, summits have been held with major global partners, including China, the European Union, the United States, and the Gulf countries. This shows that Central Asia is becoming an independent and important player in global affairs. Kazakhstan supports Brazil's initiative to create a similar format with Central Asia. We believe the region is no longer just a bridge between East and West, but is becoming an important center of economic and political activity. In today's uncertain global situation, the countries of the region have built trust and a shared sense of security. Many barriers to cooperation have been removed, creating a strong base for deeper partnership. In a short period of the time, Central Asia has become a region with growing trade and investment potential. Trade within the region has almost doubled in recent years. Transport and logistic routes are growing fast, including the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route and the North-South Corridor. Infrastructure, industrial cooperation, and digital technologies are becoming more important. We are moving step by step from the resource-based economy to the knowledge-based economy, where innovation, education, and creative industries play a key role. Central Asia also has a unique demographic advantage. It is one of the youngest regions in the world. Young people are an important force for change and create many opportunities for joint education and research projects. Special attention should also be given to water, energy, and food security. In this area, Kazakhstan is promoting the idea to creating a World Water Organization as a contribution to achieving Sustainable Development Goal 6. I would also like to mention that these days an environmental summit is taking place in Astana. It brings together international experts, policymakers, and business representatives, including delegations from Brazil and Chile. The summit focuses on finding joint solutions for sustainable development and promoting the green agenda. In conclusion, I would like to say that regional cooperation is not only a reality, but also a strategic necessity. Kazakhstan strongly supports regional cooperation and is fully interested in a stable, secure, and sustainable Central Asia. We believe that stronger cooperation between Central Asia and Brazil has great potential. We share common values such as multilateral cooperation, sustainable development, and mutually beneficial partnership. As a BRICS partner, Kazakhstan is open to deeper cooperation with Brazil in trade, investment, energy, transport, and innovation. There is also strong potential in, of course, in bilateral relations. Finally, I am confident that by working together, we help build a more stable, fair, and balanced world. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Ambassador Nussupov, and especially for mentioning water, which is one of the main issues of our time. And this court has dozens of precedents on water. We tend to see Brazil as being a wet country, but even in the Amazon, we are facing droughts. And this has happened, as you know, globally. And that's why we will be launching in the second semester a new project called the Sources of Life, which is to bring together the 10 biggest, or the countries that host the 10 biggest, the sources of the 10 biggest rivers, and several of them are here, in order to discuss how to better protect the headwaters. If we don't take good care of the headwaters, everything else will might be difficult to, if we set goals to achieve. So I'll be happy to discuss with you, Ambassador, this initiative that we will be launching in the second semester. It's my pleasure now to invite Ambassador Andhika Chrisnayudhanto, Ambassador of Indonesia and coordinator of the ASEAN Committee in ASEAN Committee in Brasília.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. Your Excellency, Ambassador Susan Kleebank, the Honorable Mr. Antonio Herman Benjamin, the Chief of Justice of the STG, my fellow Ambassador of Kazakhstan, the Dean of the Central Asia here in Brazil. Good morning. Bom dia, and I think this is as far how my Portuguese is. Again, it's a delight and of course an honor for me, on behalf of my ASEAN friends who are represented here today, speaking as chair of the ASEAN Committee in Brazil, to talk about the ASEAN and Brazil relations. And again, I think one of the most important topic here is how we unlock those potentials. An important element of that is also looking into how we, as the ASEAN Committee here in Brazil, is strengthening this cooperation in a way that it has not been done before previously. So, and last year, I think, was a landmark event where President Lula came into ASEAN and was present in Malaysia as part of the summit. So again, this is I would say an astonishing development that strengthens that potential, that we can unlock these potentials between ASEAN and Brazil. Now, again, Ambassador Kleebank has mentioned a lot about ASEAN and how Brazil is working through Central Asia as well as in Asia. But again, just let me repeat that for some of the things that we do, ASEAN consists of 11 member states. 9 of us is represented here in Brazil. And I hope more are coming to be a larger group here in Brazil. We are 11 member states. The newest member to ASEAN is Timor-Leste. When we look at ASEAN in numbers, we have 11 member states. Our GDP is around $4.5 trillion, as mentioned before. There's a population of 690 million people, so very large market there. We are the fifth, if you look at ASEAN combined, we are the fifth largest economy globally. And we are the second largest recipient for foreign direct investment. Now, ASEAN itself is located strategically, I believe, in a very vibrant, dynamic region where we are cradled between two oceans, the Indian Ocean and, of course, the Pacific. And again, that makes, I believe, ASEAN to be credible. Now, ASEAN itself in 2025 came with a new document that I believe was shaping the future of ASEAN and how ASEAN can also relate to its partners, including with Brazil. Actions that we are going to take in order to relive the commitment to a shared future between ASEAN member states. Now, it comprises of 4 important steps that we are taking traditionally, which is focusing on political security. You're looking into strengthening peace, stability, and adherence to international law. You're looking into how ASEAN can strengthen and increase its economic growth. You're looking into ASEAN, which we have coined the term centered around its people to strengthen its social, cultural development. And of course, the main important element is connectivity, something that I believe Brazil is also looking into, how you can strengthen that connectivity between ASEAN member states and, of course, connecting ASEAN with the rest of the world. Now, a new parties within that document comes out with how we can strengthen ASEAN's regional leadership, strengthen the means for digital and green economies leadership. We're also looking towards how we can create a sense of inclusiveness within ASEAN that is focusing on women, youth, and of course, the marginalized communities. We're also looking into new priorities in focusing on sustainability and, of course, in strengthening resilience. Now, that's nice in numbers. It's beautiful in words. But then again, an important element of that we believe that ASEAN itself is people-centered. So an important element of that is how institutions, think tanks, are looking into ASEAN. And I think there is an important document that came out earlier this year, and it came out from the Yusof Ishak Institute in Singapore by the ASEAN Studies Center. And they were interviewing ordinary ASEAN citizens from Indonesia, from Singapore, from Thailand, from the Philippines, from Malaysia. And they asked, what is the top challenges? Of course, you have a document that spells out what you're going to do from 2025 to 2045. But the other question is, what do the ordinary people think of ASEAN? And so they look at 3 important elements when they look into what are the challenges for ASEAN. First, it's the challenge of, first, the challenge of, so I have to read my notes. It's in yellow color, so it's hard for me to read. But I believe I'm not colorblind. So it's climate change, number 1. For the peoples of ASEAN, the governments can come up with a very beautiful document, adopted, climate change. The second one is the intensifying economic tensions between major powers. That's really a worrisome sign of worries.
Perhaps this is not this slide.
It's this side, the top 3 challenges. Okay. Right. I know, I'm sorry, it's in yellow. On that side. So it's the other one, what the peoples of ASEAN is looking into is intensifying economic tensions between major powers. So this has an effect on daily routine lives of ordinary ASEAN, members of ASEAN, people. And the other one, which is the domestic, the third challenge for ASEAN, by its people, is domestic political instability. Now, that has changed a bit since the last survey in 2025, where they looked at unemployment. And now unemployment is not a big challenge for ASEAN, but of course, the bigger problem for ASEAN is that intensifying economic tension between major powers, which is setting that agenda. Another one, and this is not something for the government, of course, is the fact that what are the top 3 geopolitical concerns for ordinary ASEAN? And right now, based on that survey, the US leadership under President Trump is #1 challenge, concern. The other one is an issue that, of course, I've been speaking with Ambassador Susan, is the issue of online scams. Is a geopolitical concern for ASEAN. And the last one is the situation in South China Sea. Of course, I think that relates on how, if you look at, if I'm going out in Brazil and asking questions, what are their concerns? One of their concerns, if you look at people that are on the street, are looking into that, the global tensions in the economy, the US leadership, those are some of the things that I believe are part of that. Now, having said that, although those are the challenges for ASEAN, how you bring ASEAN from the level of government-led to people-led, there is positive sides. And that is the reasons why so far ASEAN has been resilient. This is based on the survey. And one is that there is a strong economic leadership coming from Singapore. Another one is the strong leadership of Indonesia in coming up with consensus within ASEAN. And the third is the strong leadership portrayed by ASEAN chairs. Now we have the chair, last time it was Malaysia. So Malaysia is one of those factors that strengthens that resilience within ASEAN. And of course, we're looking into, of course, Philippines is here, the Ambassador of Philippines, Ambassador Patrick, who is now the chair of ASEAN. And I believe Philippines will also play a strong leadership role. So this having rotation of leadership within ASEAN is actually helping ASEAN develop and strengthen their means for leadership within the regional setting. So these are just some of the developments we looking on how government looks into the future for ASEAN, looking at how ordinary ASEAN is looking into ASEAN itself and how ASEAN can frame their future works. But also what was noted, and of course what was mentioned by Ambassador Kleebank, was the importance of how I believe that the visit of President Lula, Inácio Lula da Silva, was very pivotal. Pivotal in the sense that it's the first time that at the highest level, the leaders of Brazil came to ASEAN and participated at the ASEAN Summit in Malaysia last year. Some of the means that have been mentioned has been already mentioned by Ambassador Susan, looking into furthering engagement with ASEAN, strengthening ASEAN-Brazil strategic partnership, reinforcing solidarity among Global South, advancing shared priorities, sustainable development, energy transition, food security, climate action, and also promoting trade and economic cooperation between Brazil and ASEAN. But again, that pivotal moment, we should not let go. It's important that we keep this momentum going I believe this was also mentioned by Ambassador Susan, where we believe right now it's important to see how ASEAN itself is shaping their relationship with external partners. At the moment, ASEAN has around 15 dialogue partners. We have we do have also sectoral dialogue partners, and there's another one that's coming out from the document of ASEAN, which we want to heighten the relationship between ASEAN and its external partners to become strategic partners. So, for example, sectoral dialogue partners, this is where Brazil, Norway is at the moment. There's also dialogue partners, 15 of them. For example, China, the United States, European Union, Japan. Then you have those that are now at the highest peak of that strategic cooperation, and that is, for example, with China, the United States, Australia, and Japan. My hope, and if I have to deliver something here in Brazil, I would hope that Brazil becomes a strategic partner of ASEAN. And I believe the committee here is embedded with that mandate from our respective governments. That is to bring Brazil closer to ASEAN. So there are key differences if you're a sectoral partner, or if you're a dialogue partner, or even if you're a strategic partner. So if you're looking at the scope for a sectoral dialogue partner, the scope is very sector-driven and very specific. Its political engagement is low to moderate, but again, then you remember President Lula went to ASEAN and then was in the summit itself. And there's the access to ASEAN mechanism is limited, and the strategic weight is quite low, emerging. But if we can make Brazil become a full-fledged dialogue partner, then the scope of cooperation would be much more comprehensive. The political engagement would be very high. The access to ASEAN mechanism, you would have a range and broad range of mechanisms that Brazil can enter, and of course, significant in the strategic weight of that cooperation. Now, having said that, I believe so these are benefits of being a dialogue partner: strategic political access, structured and regular engagement, expanded economic opportunities, participation in ASEAN-led architecture, such as the ASEAN Regional Forum, ASEAN Defense Meeting Plus. You have the influence in regional norms and standards. Of course, this would fit in well with what we are doing today with the SDG. Enhance global positioning, and of course, platform for sectoral and development cooperation. So again, it's important. I have to again reflect this and reiterate it again to obtain more out of partnership with ASEAN, and a growing need to elevate it to a sectoral dialogue partner, to a full dialogue partner. These are some of the potentials that we see if we look at the field of justice and law. One, that there is an indirect but facilitated access to ASEAN mechanisms and regular platforms. If you look at under the political and security pillar of ASEAN, there's a number of mechanisms there that does discuss about laws and legal aspects, and that's called the ASEAN Law Ministers Meeting. There's also the subsidiary body of that, which is called the ASEAN Seniors Law Officials Meeting, where I believe the SDG would be a great partner, in particular in having attend these various mechanisms. It would boost certainly regional cooperation, but at the same time, it could also boost bilateral cooperation between member states of ASEAN and Brazil in the areas of justice, law, and legal. It's, again, when we're looking into capacity building between Brazil and ASEAN in the field of justice, we're looking into a long-term, scalable capacity building programs that can be initiated between Brazil and ASEAN, including through the STG with its partner in ASEAN. There's also the importance of that being a dialogue partner, becoming a part of that process. You have the ability to propose initiative and shape the cooperation agenda. So it's not something that ASEAN will be saying, look, this is the agenda, we set this agenda for you. But together with you, together with Brazil, particularly with the SDG, we're able to come up with initiatives, agendas on its own because of that level of cooperation through a dialogue partner, unless it is well coordinated through a formal ASEAN partner mechanism. And I believe this is the start of enhancing that bilateral, regional cooperation between Brazil and ASEAN. And of course, one of those very important elements, and I believe that sets in place with ASEAN's future work, is on the issue of legal, law, and international cooperation. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak here today. And again, another word I know in Portuguese, obrigado. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ambassador Chrisnayudhanto. Just a couple of comments here. First of all, about ASEAN, this court does recognize the importance of the institution. I was the first Chief Justice of a national court in Latin America to visit ASEAN and to discuss forests, which is an area that we, in addition to climate change, we share with the countries that are members of the organization. And I'd like to thank Ambassador Jorge Monteiro Prata, who was the one that organized this visit. This was before Ambassador Henrique Ferraro arrived in Jakarta. Specifically, in respect to Indonesia, we have a strong relationship between this court and our colleagues from the Indonesian judiciary. The previous Chief Justice attended my swearing in. The new Chief Justice is coming on June 1st and 2nd for a global conference on judicial ethics. And I, for over 15 years, have been participating in training programs at the Judicial Academy of Indonesia, which is one of the finest in the world on environmental law and climate change. Perhaps this is the time to mention that of the 5 countries in the region that we have the strongest cooperation, Indonesia is one of them. The other ones are China, India, Japan. With those countries, this court has very strong exchanges. With China, we hosted last year the first Brazil-China Law Congress. This year, we are going to host, it will be in Sao Paulo, the second one with Japan. We did the same, the first Brazil-Japan Law Congress, and with, as I mentioned, I repeat, Indonesia and India, we have very strong links. With that, I will invite now Ambassador, following the list, Ambassador Octávio Henrique Dias Garcia Côrtes, Ambassador Octávio Côrtes, our ambassador to Japan and a good friend. Agora em português. Eu convido o embaixador.
Now I would like to invite the ambassador to Japan. Chief Justice, good morning. First of all, I would like to start my remarks by greeting His Excellency Justice Antonio Herman Benjamin, Chief Justice of the National High Court, and with whom I would like to discuss the relationship between Brazil and Japan. I would like to extend my greetings to the other authorities and ambassadors who are present here today, with whom I have the honor of sharing this occasion, okay? Japan is the most traditional partner of Brazil in Asia. Last year, we celebrated the 130th anniversary of diplomatic relations between these two countries, Brazil and Japan. The hundreds and hundreds of events held in Brazil and Japan to mark this anniversary happened jointly with the President of the Republic's Luiz Inácio da Silva visits to Japan in March of 2025. This was the first state visit received by Japan since 2019. Things had been stopped because of the pandemic. It is a concrete result of the concrete result of the visit. The leaders of these two countries adopted the Brazil-Japan Strategic and Global Partnership Action Plan in Tokyo. This document contains guidelines and goals for the Japan-Brazil cooperation between 2025 and 2030. Covering political dialogue, economy, trade and investment, the environment, climate change, energy, science and technology, and innovation, development, health, and the fight against hunger and poverty, culture, education and sports, community and consular affairs, and human rights, and also social issues. I view it as a promising document because it has a set of mutually agreed upon objectives which lend greater effectiveness and practicality to the action plan. Many of these goals, they are also covered in various memoranda of cooperation signed between Brazilian and Japanese ministries during this state visit. We are already witnessing the execution and implementation of these memoranda, which reflects the renewed dynamism of this bilateral relationship. Within this context, Brazil's firm commitment to Japan and Japan's firm commitment to Brazil is evident in areas that are crucial for our economic and social development. The action plan has as its main objective to reinvigorate the strategic and global partnership, a concept launched in 2014 and consolidated during President Lula's visit. It is without a doubt a recognition of the special role that Brazil and Japan play for one another, as well as an expression of the expectation that this bilateral relationship will indeed be strategic and global. Brazil and Japan are societies with great historical and cultural richness, united by the nearly 3 million Brazilians of Japanese descent and by the more than 200,000 Brazilians who contribute to the economy and the progress of the Japanese society. Brazil is home to the largest community of Japanese descendants outside Japan. The meeting of these two cultures has shaped contemporary Brazil in many ways and continues to permeate our daily lives, from cuisine to martial arts, from agriculture to visual arts. Academic and scientific exchanges growing, and no less important are the exchanges of expertise in urban planning and architecture, which are increasingly driving the creation of smart cities in Brazil and also in Japan. In the commercial sphere, we continue to work towards progress in establishing a Mercosur-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement. This will be, I hope, a broad framework that will certainly address the priority areas of each one of the economies involved, and is going to allow for appropriate measures to preserve the sectors considered sensitive in each country. Through this agreement, we will be able to ensure that there are more business opportunities for the private sector in both countries, or between the region and the countries, in a mutually beneficial manner. Another key issue is the resilience of supply chains, a topic at the top of the international agenda. Once again, this is an area where the scope for deepening the Brazil-Japan relationship is extremely relevant, whether in the exploration of critical minerals or in investments in innovative industries that use such inputs. When it comes to the digitization and new technologies, we find yet another important point of convergence in bilateral interest. Given the inherently innovative nature of cutting-edge technologies, such as those based upon AI, we have been urging Japan to recognize Brazil's full potential as a partner in the development of high-quality solutions and innovation. In the area of legal cooperation, it is worth highlighting the signing in January of 2024, a treaty on mutual legal assistance in criminal matters between Brazil and Japan, currently pending before the Brazilian National Congress. Once in force, this agreement will allow both countries to provide legal assistance on matters such as collection and exchange of information in criminal proceedings, gathering of evidence, witness testimony, and the sharing of documents for criminal investigations. And I would like to add a topic in the speech I had prepared to mention that we have just opened up a police center here in Tokyo so that we can contrast with what we have in Brazil, because this cooperation already exists, but is extremely informal, and this agreement is going to allow us to do all of this in a formal manner. I also recall the recent missions to Japan by representatives of the Brazilian judiciary branch, an example of which is the successful agenda maintained by His Excellency Chief Justice Herman Benjamin in Tokyo last September. Also in 2025, we had the honor of hosting missions led by the then Chief Justice of the Federal Supreme Court, His Excellency Minister Luis Roberto Barroso, and by representatives of the National Council of Justice in June. This strengthens the dialogue that unites the judicial branches of Brazil and Japan, paving the way for greater cooperation and exchange in the legal field. As we move forward with our agendas in a balanced manner, we'll be able to show to the world that our partnership is truly global. In the face of challenges in the international context, Brazil and Japan must lead by example, by setting an example of dialogue and understanding, by setting an example of respect for international rules, through the example of deepening of already traditional ties in new areas of cooperation, through the example that economic collaboration yields benefits for our societies, through the example that a strategic and global relationship in both political and practical terms produce both mutual and lasting benefits. Despite the challenges, I am convinced that we are on the right path. I believe that it has become clear when we see the broadness of the areas in which we traditionally cooperate, that we still have a huge potential that hasn't been explored yet, and we must work hard so that we can go deeper into this relationship that is so old. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would just like to remind all of us about the effort of Ambassador Octávio Côrtes. I don't know if all the Brazilians that are here, they know that in 15 minutes, well, in 10 minutes actually, it's going to be midnight in Tokyo. Midnight in Tokyo, and his effort is huge. And I'm extremely grateful for his dedication, and I'm not surprised about that, because he's one of the most extraordinary diplomats of the Brazilian diplomacy. And just a remark, As Ambassador Susan Kleebank mentioned, Brazil has the largest Japanese community outside Japan. And I was curious enough to, last year, because of our first Brazil-Japan legal congress, to understand how many Japanese Brazilian judges we have, and it's over 100. So that's why in the first semester of this year, we're taking these Japanese Brazilian judges to take them on a trip to Japan. Most of them never visited the homes of the home of their ancestors, so that they can get in touch with the judges there, to get in touch with the law in Japan, and also as a feeling, as a sentimental movement of these Brazilian and Japanese judges, both men and women. And thank you, Justice Patrícia Côrtes, because in Japan she is responsible for this cooperation between Brazil and Japan, and more specifically the National High Court in Brazil and in Japan. And I would ask the ambassador, Mr. Ambassador Octávio Côrtes, please share with Justice Patrícia Côrtes our gratitude, our admiration for the work that she does. Well, thank you, Chief Justice. Now, we're going to pass the floor to Ambassador Henrique Ferraro. He's going to discuss ASEAN, and then we're going to have the debates, and we're going to start with Ambassador Jorge Prat from Indonesia. I believe it's almost 10 p.m. in Indonesia, maybe 9, I'm not sure, if I'm not mistaken. So what do I mean by that? It's late, but it's not midnight. So, Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Obrigado, senhor presidente.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I would like to wish to all of you good morning in Brazil.
Herman Benjamin.
Ladies and gentlemen, to start off, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share with you the work that we do here in Jakarta with ASEAN in the second seminar, Asia Pacific. ASEAN, the Association of Asian countries, was opened up in the 1960s during the Cold War. Its origins are related to the political and security dynamics of the region, marked by the creation of new independent countries without foreign interference in these nations. ASEAN was formally created via the Declaration of Bangkok in 1967, signed by the five founding members: Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand. Since that time, the bloc has expanded to 11 member states, including East Timor, that became a member in October of last year. The creation of ASEAN had three main goals: the promotion of regional stability and the promotion of trust among the countries, the avoidance of military and political interference in the decolonization process that started in the 1940s, and the regional cooperation as a vector of development. I have to say that differently from the EU or the Mercosur, ASEAN was not born as an economic bloc. It's more political bloc with a strong axis of security that evolved to include cultural and economic matters. Up until today, ASEAN's workings is based upon upon decision-making based upon a consensus, non-intervention, peaceful solution of conflicts, and non-use of force, based upon friendship and in the treaty that was signed in the 1970s. It's important to mention that ASEAN operates based upon a political and diplomatic belief. The association must continue in the center of the Indo-Pacific region, leading dialogues, cooperation, the creation of rules and regulations. In practical terms, this means that ASEAN wants to become the definer of the regional agenda, establishing action plans and guidelines to develop national guidelines at the same time that it coordinates regional fora, and it is a mediator of convergent ideas, preserving the space open.
The formal engagement of ASEAN with the countries outside of the region started in 1970 with the formalization of dialogues and partnerships. In the 20 years that followed, 10 countries became dialogue partners: Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Canada, the United States, South Korea, China, India, Russia, and the European Union. In the case of the European Union, evidently, this was the community, not yet the EU. In 1999, the member states of ASEAN decided, through a moratorium, the approval of more partners for dialogue. The external number of partners should not exceed the members of the bloc. This was decided at the time, and they were 10 at the time. This was approved, the partnership was approved with the United Kingdom in 2021, justified by the countries of the European Union exiting, and to continue with different partnerships with the UK. The ASEAN Charter has other ways of engagement as well with external partnerships aside from dialogue partners. There can be, for example, sectorial dialogue partnerships and development partnerships which are arrangements with a more limited scope. Brazil was the first Latin American country to become dialogue partner, a sectorial dialogue partner with ASEAN in 2022. In 2023, Brazil and ASEAN negotiated jointly a document called Practical Areas for Cooperation. I apologize here if I am repeating some of the information that was previously mentioned by Ambassador Kleebank, but I do believe that it does not compromise the presentation for us to revisit some of the topics and important figures. This document, Practical Cooperation Areas, established 33 thematic areas of mutual interest for the development of cooperation projects between Brazil and ASEAN. These 33 areas are divided in 4 axes: politics and security, including transnational crime, peace, maritime, and disaster avoidance. The second is economy, including energy, digital economy, science and technology, and innovation. Third axis, social and cultural issues, including health, tourism, climate, the environment, and gender equality. And the fourth axis includes collectivity, also mentioned by Ambassador of Indonesia to Brasília. Connectivities includes intelligent cities, digital transformations, cybersecurity, and circular economy. This document is public, and I can make it available after this seminar. Among the topics that are of special interest to this court, I highlight good governance, human rights, protection to the consumer, and the elimination of child labor and other ways of violence. In 2023, Brazil's mission in Jakarta was inaugurated to facilitate contact, to share the implementation of the projects, to do follow-up of the implementation of the projects, and to identify new opportunities for engagement. This mission was well perceived by the member states and is always remembered as an important symbol and as a sign of Brazil's engagement with Southeast Asia. I had the honor of being nominated as the first ambassador here in Jakarta. I started my work in March of 2024, and since then I have been working to strengthen relationships between Brazil and ASEAN and its 11 member states. ASEAN has a permanent secretariat in Jakarta led by Kaltenborn at the moment. Aside from that, member states also have permanent representatives with whom I am in constant contact. Brazil has 4 cooperation projects ongoing, among others that are under discussion or already concluded. ASEAN sent energy. Recently, the first phase of this project was a study for biofuel potential in Southeast Asia, and the second will support the creation of a sustainable certification framework based on the Brazilian experience. Other projects are to do with the planting of 1 million trees up to 2030, acknowledging Brazil's experience in this area, cooperation also for gender equality in the agricultural sector with exchange of good practices and visits of female leaders. Also, there is an initiative to teach Portuguese. We have projects under discussion for transnational crime, public health, and innovation as well. ASEAN also shows interest to cooperate in areas such as defense, disaster management, biodiversity, and food security. Food security is an area where Brazil has already contributed and continues to be a strategic partner. In January of this year, Brazil introduced, as was already mentioned, the Partnership for Sectorial Dialogue, the moving from dialogue to partnership, to also update the current moratoria. This evaluation will lead to a deeper engagement on every pillar, whether it's economic, social, cultural, or other. In terms of commerce, in 1992, the bloc created a free commerce to reduce tariffs among members for sensitive products. This arrangement allowed for ASEAN to have agreements, external agreements called Asian Plus. This model was deepened later, which modernized and consolidated trade guidelines to facilitate customs. In 2022, more recently, the economic or regional partnership came into being with the aim to integrate productive chains and broaden trade in the region. Brazil doesn't wish to adhere to these formats, to do it through Mercosur and the South American bloc with Vietnam and Indonesia. But in any case, commerce between Brazil and the countries of ASEAN grows, as mentioned already, tenfold between 2002 and 2024, jumping from 3 billion to 38 billion last year. ASEAN is today the fifth most important trade partner with Brazil, and after China and European Union, but ASEAN is the third highest buyer, only second to China and the United States. Brazil exports commodities or agricultural commodities, and ASEAN exports more added value. The strategy currently is focused on reducing tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, and strengthening cooperation. The issues of access to market and support to investors are dealt bilaterally by my colleagues at the Brazilian embassies in the member states of ASEAN here in Jakarta. We are focused mainly on the cooperation agenda and the strengthening of political contacts with the world. The presence and its qualification of Brazil in this privileged place will favor many of the trade arrangements, investments, and also political cooperation between our countries, and that's why it was set up as one of the priorities. The President Lula's recent visit to Jakarta in October of last year and his participation as a guest in the summit in Kuala Lumpur are important political signs of this priority. This year, the General Secretary of ASEAN, Dr. Kalkenhorn, invited by the Brazilian government, wishes to visit Brazil in August, probably to strengthen high-level contacts. Concluding, two important issues that I would like to highlight. Firstly, why is Brazil interested in ASEAN, or why this growing interest? It's a market of 680 million people, with a GDP of $4.5 trillion and very strong growth, being one of the most dynamic regions of the world. For Brazil, engaging with Southeast Asia is strategic to diversify partnerships and boost development. Aside from this, the convergence of values such as the defense of multilateralism is important to favor South-South cooperation in areas such as bioenergy and forests. Secondly, what is the interest of ASEAN in Brazil? The association looks to diversify partners and sees Brazil as a leader of the global South with important experience in sustainable development. The cooperation broadens mutual knowledge and opportunities for investment. As the largest country in Latin America and sectoral partner, Brazil also is the way into the region. We see this as a relationship without any losses. Concluding, the relationships between Brazil and ASEAN have great potential based on mutual interest, a common vision for sustainable development, and international cooperation. Brazil sees in Southeast Asia a dynamic region, growing and young, and with a young population, to deepen relations. ASEAN looks at Brazil as a relevant partner in the global South with experience in energy transition and environmental protection, and this supports a long-lasting engagement. We are optimistic towards the future. We see convergence, we see commitment with international law. This creates solid basis for a lasting partnership. Brazil and ASEAN therefore have the opportunity to build a common agenda that can lead to growth, sustainability, and South-South cooperation in an ever complex international scenario. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Ferraro. We have 25 minutes for our discussion. What I propose is for us to begin with some remarks from Ambassador Jorge Prata, and then we will have two mics roaming for the representatives of the diplomatic corps who are now invited to,
se quiserem, evidentemente,
if they wish to, of course,
fazerem manifestações.
to make remarks, to comment. The microphone is available on this side, and there's another one on this side. Just raise your hand if there is anything you wish to say,
E depois temos,
and we will then have our lunch.
então, com a palavra,
With that,
meu querido
Ambassador
embaixador,
Prata, my dear friend. Good morning, everyone in Brazil. Good evening for those of you who are on this side of the world, as my colleagues Octávio and Henrique. My special greetings to the idealizer of this seminar, Chief Justice Herman Benjamin, and my thanks for inviting me for the second time to in some way be part of this meeting. This seminar reflects the fact that we are witnesses to the fact that the center of gravity of the world is shifting to this region. And Brazil is part of this shift, in the sense that Brazil has strengthened its cooperation and its relationships with every country of Asia Pacific. And this cooperation takes place in a variety of levels and areas, whether it's in politics, in economy and commerce, in the environmental sphere, education sphere, science and technology, among others. Here in Indonesia, I have the honor of witnessing how we have strengthened those relationships and how it has been growing and diversifying. This relationship is also reflected in the interpersonal relationships. I have seen a growth of visits, a growth in frequency of visits, both for business and others to Indonesia. The President of the Republic, Lula, came here together with 200 entrepreneurs. I thought it was quite optimistic on his behalf to say that he would be coming with almost 200, but he did. On the other hand, to see huge growth when it comes to interest in this region by Brazilians, whether it's questions that they ask or travels. I have traveled extensively through Asia, and I find Brazilians everywhere I go. So these interpersonal relationships have been growing greatly in this sense. But to stick to the topic, one of the most important topics, or the most important topic of this seminar, is that all of this generates growth in relationships in various levels, but it also generates the need to cooperate and to strengthen these relationships when it comes to law. Here in Indonesia, we are negotiating some agreements for mutual assistance when it comes to civil law and criminal law, extradition. I've also witnessed among the visits that Chief Justice Herman Benjamin has carried out here, the growing dialogue between Indonesia and the STJ when it comes to law. And this is very important given the growth of bilateral relations between Brazil and every country in Asia Pacific region. I think that this cooperation instruments, when it comes to law, will help to increase the certainty and the warranties and the growth of our relations, and will witness the fact that Brazil and Asia Pacific have a huge future ahead of them. Thank you very much. I thank you very much, Ambassador Jorge Prata, And now we have an open mic for those of you diplomats who wish to make use of it. I just ask that you identify yourselves, please. The microphone is right here.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Caroline Bilkey. I'm the Chargé d'Affaires from New Zealand. Kia ora, Chief Justice. Very nice of you to host us all today, and very enjoyable presentations. Thank you, all the ambassadors who've presented so far. Learned a bit more about Central Asia, which I didn't know so much, and of course, as a member of the Asia-Pacific region, ASEAN plays a central role for us. I had a question, if I may, to the Brazilian ambassadors present. For New Zealand, a very important strand in our relationship with ASEAN is the ASEAN Australia-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, in among the noodle bowl of many trade agreements in the region. And I wasn't quite sure, Ambassador Henrique Ferraro, you mentioned that while Brazil has, or Mercosur has a trade agreement with Singapore and perhaps one under a negotiation with other members of ASEAN, is there any consideration to a Mercosur-ASEAN free trade relationship? Thank you very much.
Embaixador.
Mr. Ambassador? Mr. Ambassador, would you like to answer to a question now? Yes, sure, absolutely. Yes, Ambassador Ferraro. Should I continue in Portuguese or in English? What would be best? What would you like me to do? Maybe now during the debates, so that we can make things more agile. How about speaking English? If everybody agrees with me, I think the dialogue is going to move forward more fluidly.
Initially, I would like to thank for this important question that allows me maybe to clarify a little bit this aspect that I mentioned in my presentation. Yes, at the time, Brazil. At the time, no. This is our approach. No? Brazil negotiates through Mercosur, and there has been already there's an agreement already, Mercosur Singapore, which was signed quite recently in 2023, and I understand we are already under initial discussions with Vietnam and Indonesia. So we try to prefer agreements between Mercosur, and for the time being at least, and individual countries, individual member state countries of ASEAN, and it's not in our horizon any agreement so far, Mercosur, ASEAN as a bloc. I think I clarified this better.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know if Ambassador Kleebank would like to
Caroline
contribute.
And Ambassador, Chargé d'Affaires, Henrique Ferraro, I just would like to complement your observations. I think these negotiations are our priority nowadays, general negotiations. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs is in charge of this, is Ambassador Philip Kov, and they have a list of priorities that have been approved by CAMEX. And among them are these negotiations with big countries like Japan, Korea, and we plan to follow the same model that was used by European Union. And I think ASEAN countries are going to be listed in this list as well. There is openness, and really all the interests of negotiation is mostly welcome. So there are not only this question of negotiation of Mercosur, ASEAN, New Zealand, Australia agreement, but also other mechanisms of facilitating these bilateral conversations. The most recent example was the instrument that was signed during the visit of President Lula to South Korea, to Seoul in February this year, in which we organized what we call an arrangement of facilitating the trade. Maybe Ambassador Paulo Elias could, how to say, elaborate a little bit more about this instrument, because he was in charge of finalizing it. Thank you. Paulo Elias.
Well, thank you. Ambassador, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Paulo Martins, Director for Japan, Korean Peninsula and Pacific at Itamaraty. So my question would be to all participants in the seminar. It's become quite clear this morning that Brazil has increased its relations with Asian countries, and through high-level visits, different formats for dialogue and partnership between Brazil and Asian countries. In what sense is this strengthening of relations a consequence of bilateral convergences and concrete opportunities for cooperation? And in what measure is this a reflex of the very important international trends and issues that affect all countries? Rivalry between leading nations, geoeconomic reconfiguration, disputes for technologies, resources, energy resources as well. I think these issues have been mentioned in one way or another. I'm just trying to give it another angle. And for Minister Herman Benjamin, congratulations for this wonderful initiative. My question would be, how can dialogue between high courts and judicial cooperation also contribute to the political and diplomatic relations between Brazil and Asian countries? Lastly, regarding our recent economic, trade and economic arrangement with South Korea, it was an initiative based on the perception that we couldn't negotiate immediately Mercosur-South Korea free trade agreement. So we decided to have an instrument where we could explore non-tariff measures that could also facilitate trade and economic relations. Thank you very much.
In respect to the question that I was asked, law is everywhere, as we know. In fact, all the agreements that we are talking about, they are legal texts. And in addition to this, that's where my court, as a national court, comes in. We have domestic legislation, and we can learn, and we learn a lot from other countries. Brazil has always looked to Europe and North America, and at least in this court, we have expanded, because we cannot ignore the region that is present here. It's quite the opposite. It should be central in the dialogue that we have with international partners. But don't think that this is how it has always been. No, this is new. But we are advancing very fast in areas that were mentioned here by the different, in the different presentations, beginning with the environment. So climate change, forests, water, sustainable development in general. Organized crime, also mentioned here today. We cannot deal with organized crime in just looking internally. The other day, I received a visit of the Chief Justice of Portugal. For obvious reason, the most traditional partner in law and justice dialogue. And I asked him, in criminal law, what is the main problem that Portugal faces? And he said, the Brazilians. I was a bit surprised, but he was not talking about Brazilians in Portugal, but organized, or Brazilian organized crime that has become multinational. And this applies to Africa. If you ask the Chief Justice of Angola, for example, the Brazilian organized crime is now becoming global. So this is one area that we definitely need to. And finally, or last but not least, trade and investment. All this has to do with law and harmonization of internal legislation. And I said last, but it's not last because we have to include human rights. At the end of the day, what brings us together here is the rule of law, a robust rule of law based on human dignity, human rights, a democratic rule, because independent courts do not exist in a vacuum, in separation with all that. So I went beyond what you asked, but this court is really interested in all those areas. And one of the things that we are doing, for example, in the next, the second Brazil-China Congress, and Japan too, with the Japanese, is to bring in our partners from South America. So we're inviting the law schools of Argentina and the Chief Justice of Argentina to join us here. It's not just us looking towards Asia and the Pacific, but including our neighbors in this whole process. There is no feeling of monopoly here from our side. Well, it's quite the opposite. We want to do this in conjunction with the neighboring countries, especially Argentina, Peru, and Colombia. Those are the three main partners that we have. I think that's it. And there are other questions, so I ask Ambassador Kleebank, would you like to address the questions, or we can do at the very end of this?
As you wish.
Okay.
You are the owner of the house.
No, I'm just the host, but not the owner. So please.
Dear Minister, I would like to thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. I think we have new realities. Asia is one of the places of the world that have the most puissant and part in these new realities. So we have new jurisprudence, and to share the experience in the judicial area about this new jurisprudence is fundamental. So we are open to your suggestions on how could you propose to ASEAN, taking into account that you plan to be your dialogue partner very soon, initiatives that we could take together to improve our relationship and to be a real partner of ASEAN countries. Thank you so much.
What I think it's also important that we realize is that Brazilians, I'm talking about the legal community, know very little about Asia, the legal systems of Asia, and how robust judiciaries we have in the region. And I see here, for example, Indonesia, a country that has, in terms of judicial rule of law, the chemistry is there. We have the problems that are common, but also we have the institutions in place. So the investment that we can make is beneficial. The same thing with India, Pakistan, Nepal. I mentioned just some of the countries that are present here, and the strong relationship that we have with China as well. So, other comments, please? Yes, Ambassador.
First of all, thank you very much, Honorable Chief Justice. I'm Ambassador of Nepal. We really appreciate this edition of discussion with countries from Asia Pacific. And I also would like to thank Madam Ambassador Susan for a comprehensive presentation. In Nepal, we have a new government led by young people, and the priority is to economic transformation and good governance. And when it comes to good governance, judiciary and the executive branch of governments are working together, but within separately within the constitution, but in a government of as a whole approach. And I had spoken to the acting Chief Justice, Madam Sapna Pradhan Malla, who admires her collaboration with Your Honor in different multilateral forums, and is committed to work together in shared areas of interest between Nepal and Brazil. I would like to know, you mentioned about the judicial congress and cooperation between Brazil and Japan, China, India, Portugal, Angola. So any mechanism that operates such summits, or that operates in rather informal setting? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We have a strong cooperation with Nepal that predates my Chief Justiceship, and is one that we have benefited bilaterally enormously. I think it's a mistake to think that we should collaborate only with the biggest economies, the biggest countries, the most populated countries. In some areas, the best examples are in smaller countries, and Nepal is one country that we have learned a lot. How in terms of diversity, we could not imagine a country that has geological, topography, people, environment, history, diversity than Nepal. So we feel very privileged to have this strong collaboration with your country. Any other comments, observation? If not, then I'll ask our special guest, Ambassador Susan Kleebank, to wrap up this meeting. Again, as a Brazilian, it is a privilege to have her as, first of all, a diplomat, and second, as the Secretary for Asia and the Pacific. She represents, within an institution that is in itself the best, or among the best in this country, she represents the very best. So many thanks, and please.
Dear Chief Justice, dear colleagues, dear Excellencies, thank you so much for the participation and for your interest in sharing experience and building bridges between our countries. Minister Herman Benjamin, we are at your disposal to repeat this initiative as many times as possible and to contribute to the other initiatives, as you mentioned, the one about the seminar about rivers in the second semester of this year. Please feel free to contact us and to invite us to all these events. It's going to be not only a privilege, but also a pleasure to participate. Thank you so much, and thank you for your presence, of all of you. Thank you.
we are only 3 minutes late. We were supposed to end at 12:30. This means that we can proceed now to lunch. Again, many thanks to all of you, many thanks to the team, to the interpreters, the technical people, and those that would like to have a video, how do you call, the recording, the video recording. Just let us know. Minister Arnaldo Fernandes can provide that to those that request. Many thanks. And many thanks to our ambassador. You notice that Ambassador Octávio Côrtes insisted on staying until past midnight. And this is quite remarkable. So many thanks to all of you, the three that have been with us from the other, literally from the other side of the world, and benefiting from the use of technology. Thank you, and good night to the three of you. If you please don't disappear, because we are going to take a picture, and we need you in the background too. The three that are connected.